There's just something about creating with your hands that makes your mind quiet. So let's make a chunky knit blanket together. All you need is your hands and chunky size 7 yarn. So let's make a slip knot. You're just gonna loop it around like this, and then grab the base here and turn your loop over on that working yarn. That's what that's called right there. It's attached to the ball of yarn. Pull that loop through while you're holding the back 2 ends, and this is your tail end here. And you can pull on your working yarn so that you make the loop a little bit smaller. And if you pull on that working yarn and it doesn't move, then it might not be a slip knot. You might need to do it again. So this loop right here needs to be 2 fingers wide, or a loose 3 fingers. And then going on to our next loops, you're gonna wanna bring that yarn behind and up through your loop. So I push it through, some people pull it through, but I push it through and pull a little bit on my yarn here to make another loop. And I'm holding that tail end back on the left there. These chains need to be 3 fingers wide. And 3 fingers wide because that first chain needs to be a lot looser than the rest of the blanket. And I'm showing you right here, tension's important. So you're gonna wanna have that working yarn as close to the base of that loop as possible. Continue pulling up your loops until you get to the width that you want of your blanket. And I always measure because everyone's finger widths are different. Once you get to your width, you're going to turn over your chain. And this right here is a dragon back. So you see those bumps in the middle? We're gonna pull up our loops into those bumps. But first off, the last loop should be 2 fingers wide. So pull up your loops from underneath each little dragon bump on the back there. And what this does is give you a nice braided edge on the bottom. These loops should be 2 fingers wide and not 3, because otherwise your blanket may be really loose. But it just depends on how loose you want your blanket, really. The looser it is, the more it will flow. So we're coming up on the last little dragon back right here. Sorry, I sped it up. And it's the same, 2 fingers wide. So now you're gonna wanna flip your chain to the front again. And so it has that nice braided edge on the bottom. Kind of adjust so your loops are facing up. Right here on this edge, we're going to do a drop stitch so that that edge is nice and braided as well. So don't stitch the last stitch again. You're gonna go to that second stitch and come in and stitch all the way back across. So you're gonna take your working yarn, push it through and pull up a loop. Working yarn through, pull up a loop. And so keep going until you get to the other edge again. And we're gonna pick up this stitch now. And this stitch on the first one, you're going to twist it. And that just gives it a nice, good edge. You don't have to, it's just a little tip. Gives it a nice corner. And this loop on the edge should always be about 1 1/4 the size of your 2 finger loops, just because it's a drop stitch and you don't want it to get really tight in there. So going back to the left, we're going to pull up stitches in each of our stitches we already made and make them about the same size, 2 fingers, or you kind of compare the size of them as you go. And right here, we're going to pick up that drop stitch again. And we're not really skipping the stitch, even though some people kind of say that. We're just not stitching it twice. So see, I stitch it on the way back, but I'm just not going to stitch it again. I'm going to go to that next one in instead of stitching it twice, basically. So now just keep going. You know, let your hands be busy and your mind just goes. And as soon as you get this down, I promise it's extremely therapeutic. Look how nice that braided edge is. For time's sake, follow for part 2 on finishing your blanket.